PowerShell for any kind of database experience. Anybody know what that is on a regular basis? So a little bit about me. My name is Warren Estes. I work for a financial application services company. Still working with Microsoft Services 7.0 and developing a couple different languages. Here's some of my contact information. I just started a blog a little while ago, a couple months ago, but I post a lot. So the agenda for today is just kind of to go over a little bit about what DBAs do and this and your situation, person who is employee. Database administrator. I'm not going to be able to cover everything. Just want to cover the basics. And then go on to show you how PowerShell fits in. DBA tools. It's really easy. It's really a great stepping stool, even for someone that's been PowerShell user. Because databases of board that hasn't learned how to go. It's a great opportunity to look at what can be accomplished with PowerShell. So automation. Oh, okay. How about here? Should I just stand here? Is that better? Can you hear me now? Okay, I'll just stand here. So I love automating stuff. A, because I'm lazy, and B, because it allows me to, yes, I'm very lazy. Exactly. Let's kick back and browse Reddit. So automation allows me to do repetitive tasks more efficiently, and also gives me the opportunity to evaluate new technologies and methodologies. Unfortunately, sometimes in this this cartoon here, it doesn't always go smoothly, but more often than not with PowerShell, it's pretty easy and simple, and it goes much smoother than expected. So I like to show this slide to DBAs and why they should learn PowerShell. So you only manage one instance. You don't need to learn PowerShell. If you're a big fan of pointing and clicking, don't worry about PowerShell. If you only work with Windows NT or 2000, again, no need to learn PowerShell. If you hate making things easy for yourself, definitely don't learn PowerShell. And if you don't want to increase your value as a professional, don't learn PowerShell. Why DBA or anybody needs to learn PowerShell? Well, in this instance, DBAs, you manage more than one instance. Automating repetitive tasks. As a database administrator, I do a lot of repetitive things and like to script it out as much as possible with either T-SQL or PowerShell. Microsoft is PowerShell focused. I remember starting back and looking at it in 2.0, playing with it a little bit and then kind of putting it down, and then jumped back into it about a year and a half ago, and it's blown my mind. Managed service accounts for SQL Server. Anybody use managed service accounts that have SQL? Yeah, so you can only use PowerShell. And PowerShell bridges the Microsoft SQL Server and OS gap pretty seamlessly. You no longer have to use XP command shell for a lot of stuff, and everything's an object. And obviously, you want to add value to your team and organization. So what does a DBA do? And if you work with DBAs, you probably hear this answer a lot. It depends. So it really depends on what focus you are. You can be focused on just production, SSAS, SSRS, analysis services, BI stuff. I don't really mess with that too much, but there are people that have careers on those different tracks. So it can get deep in certain areas. So I just kind of comprise a list of, if you're parachuting into a situation, if you're accidentally becoming a DBA, or you're taking over a server, these are the most important things that you need to be aware of when you own that server or when you're in that situation. Backups and restores obviously are incredibly important. Integrity checking, checking for corruption, both logically and physically, super important. And maintenance, so index rebuilding, which is kind of a hot button, and statistics. So if you have to pick one or the other, I would pick statistics and not index rebuilds. Ask Brent Ozar or anyone else. More often than not, a rebuild solves the problem, not because of the index rebuild, but because of the statistics. So performance troubleshooting. And that's a little beyond the scope of this, but I hope nobody has to get pulled into performance troubleshooting if you're an occasional DBA. But I'll show you some DBA tools, options to help you with that. So backups, just some basics on backups. What determines your HADR and backup scenario is going to be your recovery point and recovery time objective. This is basically how long the system can be down and how much data you can afford to lose. So full backups offer no point in time recovery. It's all or nothing, and it's essentially a full complete copy of the database. Differential backup. How about now? Yeah. Differential backups are essentially changes since the full backup, last full backup. And the changes are cumulative, so you only need the last differential backup. Log backups allow point-in-time recovery, and if your data is critical, then you obviously need to have your database in full recovery model as opposed to simple recovery. But you can read about that online and determine that on your own. All transactions are transaction log since the last backup. And restores. So this is super important. Your backups are only as good as your restores. You can take as many backups as you want, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those backups are good or that data in the backup itself is good. SQL Server will happily back up corruption, and the only way to check that is checking integrity and restoring your backups on a regular basis. So if you can't restore, then your backups are toast, and so it's your job. So always be restoring. You can also offload some tasks to another server while you're doing that restore. So you can do the check DB over there, and also use that as a reporting server as well. So performance, hopefully you're not getting pulled into situations like this where it's just a terrible, terrible, terrible decision by developers. So SMO. SMO are just simply specific .NET assemblies, instance, database, tables. The instance class has SQL Server objects like servers, databases, tables, triggers, and stored procedures. And the other class is utility class, which has scripting, backup, restore, and transfer. SMO was introduced in 2005. I believe before that was DMO. But if you've opened up SSMS, you're already using it because that's what SSMS uses behind the covers. DBA tools. DBA's tools was inspired by lack of migration assistance. Chrissy Lemaire developed it first back to help migrations, and it's still amazing for migrations, and I'll show you that a little later. Best practices are in mind with DBA tools. There's a lot of commandlets that are developed for best practices, and there's a ton of new commandlets that just came out. Yeah, I just did a presentation back in like February, and I think there were like 90, and now there's like 330 or something. It's ridiculous. It's all pre-written code, obviously. Amazing amount of resources go into this. Just watching the Slack channel and seeing everyone just do work, it's insane. And like I said before, it's an easy step from DBA to PowerShell and vice versa, PowerShell Guru to DBA. It's really simple and everyone should be using it, I think. So let's look at some demos. No, I have a ton of GIFs, but a lot of them are just not appropriate. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I'm a Star Wars and Star Trek, so I just like merged them both together. And also like getting like the weird looks. People are like, that doesn't make any sense. All right, so let's see if any of my SQLs are not running. They are. So connecting to a database and querying without SMO is a little verbose, but in certain situations, it's definitely needed. In my environment, there are hundreds and hundreds of instances that may or may not have SMO, SSMS installed, depending on the version. So I kind of have to bust it down to just creating my own objects, which is fine. But just to show you how easy it is, just declaring my server, creating the object, connection string, connecting, and just getting a scalar value from sys databases where database equals 1, and that's going to give me the master. Things get a little more verbose and tough. I guess probably not for PowerShell guys, but nevertheless, it gets a little bit more complicated with data sets. Still not super hard, but it's definitely a lot easier with SMO. And these are all the assemblies that are available to you through SMO, and I stole this from Chrissy Lemaire on Net Nerds, and I think this is in DBA tools as well. But it goes through and loads all the assemblies for you, which is great. And the other option is to simply load the SQL Server provider, which is now available on the repository. It used to only be available through SSMS. And there's some caveats with the different versions that you'll have to be aware of when you use it. So let's load SQL Server provider. It's gonna make all these commandlets available to me. Some of them are useful, some of them may not be so useful. But one thing that's kind of cool is that it drive can navigate through SQL Server just like it would through SSMS. So let's navigate now through my server. I'm going to go to SQL, change to my machine. And these are all the instances that are available to me that are running right now. Kind of cool. It's great to get your feet wet and experiment with this a little bit. So let's use the provider and query the database this way. So this is a little bit easier than without and just using the .NET. So a lot less verbose and a lot more Warrens. So way easier. So does anyone have to manage more than 1, 2, 3 SQL servers? Does anybody use central management server? Yes? Okay, cool. So like I said before, I work with a ton of instances, hundreds and hundreds. So we have a central management server, which has all of the servers. I'll show you kind of what that looks like here. So you have a main server, and then target servers underneath. So you can create jobs, push those jobs to all those servers. And what's great about this is that you have a centralized location to store all of your instances. You don't have to maintain a text file or an Excel spreadsheet somewhere that somebody can monkey around with. So I actually stole this, borrowed from Derek Hammer, Chrissy Lemaire, and kind of wrote it for my own environment to return specific instances based on the folder name. So I can create a folder specifically for doing specific work against a bunch of instances, load those into an array or what have you, and then run work against all of those. So just going to load the do I not have the right location? Yeah, I renamed it. Sorry. I get for typing right before demo. All right. So now I can just list all of the servers that are underneath this CMS. Excuse me. It's going to give me every server with the group and full path. If I have more than one path, and in my environment we have many nested folders, could be 4 or 5 deep. So it's handy to see the full path as well. So I can predicate this on the CMS folder here, dev, load that into something, do work based specifically on that folder. So in a real world scenario, I'm sure you're asking, what would I do? So what this does here is grabs all SQL Server agent job and backup history from any folder that I ask it to from the CMS server. and it's going to load it into a predefined database and tables here. I'm just going to show you tables to show you that it's empty. So, empty table. And I'm going to grab all the historical and job information from these tiny servers. So in a large production environment, that's obviously going to take a lot longer, an hour, maybe two. I think it took 3 hours to go through our one environment. So out of three environments, but it's something like this, I don't really care how long it takes. It just runs in the background and goes into a historical table. So that's kind of cool to grab all the backup and job history information for your organization. And that can obviously be adjusted for any other information that you'd want to get. So, anybody have any questions, concerns? Did that crash? So let's get into some DBA tools. So these are all the commands. Wow, it's crazy to see all these commands. These are all the commands that are available to you. I don't know all of them at all, but I often find myself finding commands that I didn't know of that are super useful. And I do a lot of one-off restores and copying databases, copying logins for certain situations. But it's just amazing to see what they've done with this. Just yeah. Yeah. Get DBA history to restore database. Right. Yeah, it's crazy. Right. So that you're doing like half of the configuration. Yeah. It's like Street Fighter combos. Yeah. Does everybody use VS Code, ISE? So the SQL Server module has 98 commandlets, and DBA Tools has 331. That's crazy. Stuff I use all the time, test connection. Super easy. I'm going to test the connection to my SQL Server. Boom. Easy. One thing you want to do if you are getting into an environment that you aren't really sure of, getting a database list from all the instances, super easy with DBA tools. Get DBA database. It's going to give me absolutely everything that I want to see here. The size, the recovery model, which is super important, and collation. So let's see a restore. Actually, Actually, let's fire off some jobs. So I'm just going to fire off full jobs across all my instances. Then using SMO, I can navigate to the SQL Server agent jobs. I mean, I don't need to explain PowerShell to PowerShell user group, but it's incredibly easy to work with SQL Server through PowerShell. Creating the SQL Server SMO, the server object, assigning the job based on the name here, and then starting the job. Fortunately, the first step is the exact name of the job itself. And I'm using Ola Hollengren's backup scripts currently just because it's easy to set up. Well, there's other stuff that you can use. You know, Redgate has backup stuff. Minionware, Minion Backup is there as well. I'm just not familiar with it. Definitely something I should probably check out though. So we're running backups. So now, one of the things that I was having not issues with, but kind of started, it started as a small project and turned into something a little bit bigger. You know, how do you restore a database, you know, from a file share? How do you build that restore script? You could simply point and click, but what if you have 30 databases, production systems down, you know, your boss is screaming at you, or you're on a call, or even worse, a web conference, and people are, you know, pinging you and asking you questions. You don't want to be pointing and clicking. So let's do something stupid. Solo. But first, let's fire off a differential. And then a log. So we should have a differential and a log, but I don't think anything has really changed. So it should just be, we can restore the differential. But, so this is a SQL script that I wrote to take a couple, just a few variables. And this is before I started using DBA tools. It still is used by a lot of members of my team because they're not really familiar with PowerShell or DBA tools. You know, a lot of times they can't really install it in certain environments, so this is easier to copy and paste. But this will take the last, and depending on how you specify it, either the last full, only the last full in diff, from the backup history table. We can specify recovery or no recovery, depending on the environment. Obviously, if you are, you know, restoring for log shipping or something, you want to not recover. You can move the files, but again, this is a pretty large stored procedure to cover all of that information. And at the end, would you rather run one command in DBA tools or have to work with all of this? So let's just run it here for AdventureWorks. Oh, we're on the wrong database. So AdventureWorks is not there. have to spell it right. So it's going to grab only the last full, because I specified only last full. But if I want to grab everything, we're going to grab the last full, differential, and actually there's been 2 log backups since that time, and it handles the recovery for me as well. But does my folder keep disappearing? Come on, VS Code. I'm just going to reload that. So if we do something stupid, like forget to highlight the where clause and delete everything from the sales order table, you should have transactions, but I've definitely done this before. I accidentally not highlighted the where clause and deleted everything from the table. Oops. So now we can either restore it manually by pointing and clicking, which obviously doesn't scale. Build the files needed from the system MSDB tables. And if you have a script like this, great. If not, then the easiest thing would be to restore with DBA tools. So include VS Code will cooperate this time. Why does it sometimes not show my folder? It's amazing. All right, so let's go to, where were we? Solo. So here I'm picking the full database that I want to restore from, unfortunately. But you can also pipe information into DBA tools as well. So obviously this isn't the best scenario. But showing the database, apparently it doesn't have access. That's weird. Okay. Never type in a demo. Okay. We are now restoring. So much easier with DBA tools. going to fire off another full backup on this guy here. My other instance here, Kenobi. I'm going to restore a specific database here, T-SQL version 3, and it's going to pull it from the specific folder structure. So I said before, I'm using Ola Hollengren's backup solution here. So all I need to do is point it to that specific folder location, and it's going to figure it out for me, which is pretty awesome.
Sort by last modified descending, and then type that, or wrap that in brackets, select the first one from the array, and do dot full name, dot three methods. That way you just always grab it wrong method.
I'm sorry?
You type that for the get child items, get child objects. And that way you can just pull down your newest backup from the pull backup folder.
For the, oh, yeah. Yeah, I could absolutely do that. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, you can pass that in as well. I generally don't, I love DBA tools, but I generally don't use it for backing up and restoring. I use it for migrations and copying instances, and moving logins and specific databases. I generally use this this monstrosity of a T-SQL script because I'm moving between untrusted domains that don't have internet access. So, it's just easier to copy and paste this. And some of my team members aren't PowerShell literate, so it's easier to kind of keep this up to date and move that around. But yeah, it's much easier to use the get child item. So super easy to restore, but what I love about this is the migration, copying databases, just pointing it to a share, taking a copy only backup and throwing that on another instance. So let's move a user. Am I moving for? So I created a user here, Trump DBA. And if you don't follow Trump DBA on Twitter, I suggest you do. It's amazing. It's all fake data, sad. So moving a login is incredibly easy, super easy with DBA tools. It takes absolutely everything. And if anybody has used the SP, hexadecimal, all that stuff to move a login with T-SQL, this is just a no-brainer. I haven't used that, and I can't remember how long I haven't used it. Yeah, exactly. So that was like initially like one of the first things I was like, oh my god, what am I doing with my life? So, and it moves absolutely everything, not just username and password. So I changed his default database to, let's change it to tempdb, aka the toilet, the public outhouse, and obviously Trump's language is going to be Russian. So let's move Trump DBA Trump DBA from Yoda, Tatooine, Yoda, and yeah, I know Yoda wouldn't be on Tatooine, but let's move it to Kenobi here, and just to show you he's not there. So let's move Trump DBA and that's it. Pretty amazingly easy. These default database is correct and language is correct. Pretty awesome. A no-brainer. Same thing with copy databases. So I'm going to copy database from Kenobi to Vader using a share, backing up and restoring. So T-SQL version 3 is copied over. Really easy when you have to move databases back and forth.
Does that move over any
No, I don't think so.
You then have to update.
You can copy the login.
Right. Yeah. So database
But what's even better,
is the whole. Yes, I've used that, but.
so let's get rid of this T-SQL over here. You'll see Trump DBA is not there on Kenobi. He is there because we moved him from Yoda. So let's, and this is pretty amazing. Start DBA migration. It's going to migrate absolutely everything over from my instance Kenobi to Vader, backing up, restoring, using a network share. I don't want to rename the SA. I don't want credentials. I don't want the user objects, no extended events, and no audits. So this is going to just copy everything over, and this is something that I absolutely love. I use this constantly. And that's it. Go get a cup of coffee. For a real server, yeah. Go get some coffee and I mean, there isn't much on this database at all. And that's it. Copied absolutely everything over from Kenobi to Vader. Database is there. DBA is there. Trump DBA is there. Incredibly easy. You can also obviously use DBA tools to back up all your databases. So I can use it to back up every single database. In this instance, to a specific UNC. And that's going to dump a full backup to this specific backup location. Diagnostic information. If you need to troubleshoot something, anybody know Glenn Berry, DMV, Master Wizard, came up with diagnostic queries. So DBA tools, this is a brand new commandlet that basically runs that against your instance for you, exports all of the results to a path. You can also use this selection helper to pick and choose what you want. But if you don't do that, it's going to export everything for you. So I want to get information.
Before you run that, do you have the one specific for 2014 or whatever version of SQL you're using? Or do you have multiples in that? Or does it ask you?
I'm sorry, for what?
Because there's a 2012, 2014, 2016 version of those diagnostic data.
Oh,
So which one do you have?
good question.
And can you specify that? I haven't. Right. Because I have a mixed environment where I put those, so and I saw that but I haven't used it yet because honestly it's easier to start with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, me as well. Oh, let's load it. I'm actually not sure.
Yeah, that's
So in the background, it does it for you. That's cool.
yeah,
Of course it does.
doesn't get good.
Very cool.
That's
Yeah. So super easy if you just want to get diagnostic information. But yeah, it's even easier just to pick and choose and run this by hand anyway. So it gives you absolutely everything if you don't specify, but that's pretty awesome that it runs this for you automatically. Pretty awesome. Still going. So another thing that I've done, one of my last jobs, sending statistics to developers, especially not having to pump hundreds of gigs and send that to them. I can just send them statistics so they can check out query plans against that. So using SMO PowerShell, you can get statistics for every single database. Pretty simple and easy. So all my statistics for all my databases, give that to my developers. They can load that and check out query plans for them. Let's see. So another project I was working on, we have application owners that don't want their databases rebooted without stopping services on their applications. And some of these applications have 5, 6, 10 servers, and on each server they may have 4, 5, 6, 7 plus services. So perfect example of how to use PowerShell. I'm using a database repository to hold the database and application information along with the service information. So just show you that really quick. So I have a VM here. It's about to get rebooted. And I'm specifying specific applications for each server, restart order for each server, and is fuzzy just simply, you know, if it's going to be an exact match or it's going to need a you know, a wildcard here for PowerShell. So this scales for, you know, as many apps and as many services as you need. And to show you that right now. Oh, that's right. I created a module. So nice little DBA tools fix, DBA reboot. So all it does is accepts a repository, goes and checks the schedule. So this server that I'm about to reboot gets rebooted on day 1, time slot 3, which is I think 1 a.m. But I short-circuited it in the code to reboot now. So all I do is just simply start DBA server. The repository is and I didn't turn on verbose, but you would have seen each server and service come down, or going through each server and then going through each service one by one that's listed in the database. It's going to pause the service, wait for the WMI right now. Or maybe I changed it. So then after the database restarts, it's going to check to make sure that the service is up and running, and then go back through and restart it in the exact same order that it brought it back down. What's that? I'm sorry? So I'm writing it to a table right now. Here, services are coming back up. Let's turn stopping services that I don't care about on my local and this VM server that I have here. It's rebooting. It's much better with the verbose. You can see what's going on. But it's pretty awesome. Keeps me from having to interact with people and application owners. Don't have to open up tickets, wait for them to do stuff. This is automation at its best. I mean, SQL Server and PowerShell together, it's amazing. And now it's going to make sure that SQL's up and running. And then it restarts it in the exact opposite order. Well, the original stop worker. And pretty cool. Another project. Does anybody work with SSRS reports, subscriptions? I had no idea how SSRS worked. It didn't really care too much, but we have need to alter hundreds of subscriptions at once. How do you do that? PowerShell. So I had no idea and figured that it could be done with T-SQL because there is a schedule table for, yeah. So scratching my head, trying to SSRS. So I wrote a couple functions after realizing that you cannot update the job schedule, I'm sorry, the subscription schedule with T-SQL. So if I look for this report here, EMP1, I have 2 subscriptions, should have 2 subscriptions, loading. This is really cutting into my Destiny 2 beta time. Xbox. So we have 2 subscriptions that will load momentarily. While we're waiting, I'll show you the current start date and end date for this one schedule subscription. 8/1, there is no end date. So if I update that subscription in the schedule table, it shows up there, but it doesn't show up here. So after searching around, I didn't really find too much online. The one thing I did see was Andy Mallon had a post about SSRS and moving reports, and after that I realized that it's a SOAP call, SOAP API. So I built 2 functions here to just go through and list subscriptions based on folder, owner, description, and then pipe that to set subscription so you can set the start time or end time. So we have hundreds and hundreds of subscriptions that need to be stopped and started based on this new upgrade move that we're doing. So just show you create the proxy. So in this folder right here, I have two subscriptions. One is the EMP1, really important one. Where is it? Really important. And the other one is just EMP1 subscription. So I can narrow that down to just simply getting the really important one, which is there. One thing I don't like about VS Code is it doesn't automatically move the terminal window down. That's kind of annoying. Yeah. I mean, I love working on it when I'm on my local machine, but then when I have to like go to jump servers and stuff, I don't even bother. And half the time I just open up ISE anyway. But I love the folders over here. It's awesome. So I can just list subscriptions by, oh, thank you for break. List, I always hit F5 accidentally too, going from SQL to, that's why I love just always throw break at the top. So listing the subscriptions by description, can list it by owner here. So every single subscription created by this owner. And now what I can do is change the subscription to the end date. So 9/30 was what we tried to change it to. It didn't show up in the GUI. So come on. So let's start. Apparently my SQL Server agent is not set to auto start here. Let's try that again. There we go. So now if I look at the GUI and the table, it's going to reflect 9/1. If I hit F5, I now see that the end date is 9/1. So I thought that was pretty cool, or at least challenging to work with SSRS, but another way that the DBA or somebody that works with SQL Server gets to use PowerShell. Any questions? Anything else? I think that's pretty much it. Again, my folders are gone. Where are my folders? What's that? Oh, I just don't use it enough. It wasn't VS Code, it was me. Oh. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I'm just an idiot. I'm an idiot apparently. Just
Yeah, there's a lot of button in that.
so some PowerShell DBA resources. These are DBA focused PowerShell peeps. Chrissy Lemaire, Derek Hammer, Mike Fowl, Paul, Richard, Sidaway, Andy Mallon, and Drew Ferguel. Thank you, Ferguel. It always slips me up. And the PowerShell Slack channel. DBA resources for people that want to learn DBA stuff. I mean, there's so many, it was hard to pick and choose. We got SQL skills. That's top of the list. Most stuff always ends up at SQL skills or Stack Exchange. Brent Ozar, SQL blog, SQL Server Central, the SQL Sentry blog, MS SQL Tips, Grant Fritchie, Kendra Little, SQL Help on Twitter. People are always taking way too much time to help other people, which is pretty amazing. The SQL community on Slack and DBA tools, Slack as well. So lots of help out there. Free tools, SB Who is active, I didn't even get into that. Ola Hollengren's backup solution, Minionware, Redgate's got free stuff, and the SQL Sentry Plan Explorer. You saw that giant monstrosity of a plan. So that's it. Any questions? Yes.
You got a top 10 for your DBA tool?
Oh,
Top 10 commandments?
top 10 commandments. The migration, copy database, copy login, test connection, and disk space. Disk space, I love. I mean, there's so many new ones right now that I have to go through all of them because they renamed them all as well. A lot of them, so I'm re-going through them. I just updated today to the 9.1. I did have the 8.6.0. So, but I mean, there's so many. It's ridiculous. The amount of 300, yeah, 331. It's insane. It's like almost making the SQL Server provider useless. Yep.
I saw SQL 2016.
It depends. It depends on the environment. Mostly anywhere 2012, 2014, mostly. We have some 2016s, but not mainstream production.
Have you done the
I usually ship, you mean like grabbing the statistic information, putting it on a different version and checking to see if like the plan sheet's different? I haven't done that specifically for versions, no. But I mean, we've done that for large databases that we don't want to copy over. Definitely going from a little database that you're working on, writing stored procedures, and then you want to get all that histogram information into that smaller database without having to push all the ones and zeros over. It's a big thing. Beer clock. Beer clock. Well, thanks for coming. Friday night. How do we stop this recording? Whoa, 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 whoa. It's with PowerShell.
When you used to do the recording?
PowerShell.
Start.